The backyard was a circus, string lights swinging, classic rock blaring from a Bluetooth speaker, and my family packed around picnic tables, toasting my parents' 45th wedding anniversary. I was at the grill, flipping burgers, sweat beading. On my forehead, the same way I'd been the family workhorse for years. At 37, I was used to it, setting up chairs, chasing my nephews, keeping the chaos in check. Harold, my dad, stood up, beer bottle in hand, clinking it with a fork like some small-town mayor. The crowd hushed, and I figured he'd give another sappy speech about love and legacy. "We're taking the whole family to the Maldives next week," he announced, voice booming like he was selling a used car. "Another party, but with beaches. And sun!" Cheers erupted. My brother Caleb whooped, my sister Nora clapped, and the kids shrieked about snorkeling. I felt a spark of excitement. Maldives, a real break from my grind of overtime shifts and family favors. I wiped my hands on E. My apron stepped closer and called out over the noise. "What time's the flight, Dad?" I asked, already mentally shuffling my work schedule at the construction site. Harold turned, his grey eyes narrowing like I'd asked to borrow his truck. "You don't need to know, Tristan," he said, loud enough for every cousin, aunt, and neighbor to hear. "You're not family. Stay here and watch the kids." The words hit like a sledgehammer to the chest. My mom, Marlene, snorted a sharp laugh, waving her hand like it was nothing. The table went quiet for a split second. Then Caleb muttered something about luggage, and the chatter roared back. No one looked at me. No one cared. I stood there, spatula in hand, heat creeping up my neck, the smell of charred beef choking me. Not family? After 37 years of bailing them out, paying their bills when Dad got laid off, rebuilding their garage for free, babysitting so Caleb and Nora could play perfect parents, I was the guy who made their lives work, and now I was nothing but the hired help. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out the party. I wanted to flip the grill over, scream that I'd given up college, travel, a life for them. But their laughter, their clinking glasses, told me they'd never see me as more than a tool. My chest tightened, like a belt cinched too hard. I was shaking, not from anger, but from the gut-punch realization. I'd been betting on a family. That didn't want me. Marlene's smirk burned into me, and Harold's words echoed, "Not family." I was an idiot for thinking a trip to paradise would include me. The noise faded to a dull hum. I couldn't breathe here, not with their eyes sliding past me like I was invisible. My grip on the spatula loosened. I didn't know what came next, but I knew I couldn't stay. Not after this, not after they'd carved me out of their world. In front of everyone I'd spent my life trying to hold together. I didn't yell. I didn't smash anything. I just let the spatula slip from my hand, the metal clattering against the grill, and walked away. The party's roar faded as I crossed the lawn, my boots crunching gravel, the screen door creaking shut behind me. I climbed into my truck, the cab smelling of sawdust and old coffee, and drove. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white, but my mind was blank like a TV stuck on static. The betrayal, Dad's voice calling me an outsider, Mom's cruel chuckle, sat in my gut like a lead weight, too heavy to process. At my apartment, a cramped one-bedroom above a dive bar, I locked the door and sank onto the couch. The springs groaned under me. I stared at the coffee table, littered with reminders of them. A wrench from fixing Caleb's car, a crayon drawing from Nora's kid. I picked up the wrench, its cold steel biting my palm, and tossed it into a corner. It thudded against the wall, but I felt nothing. My phone buzzed, probably Nora checking if I'd locked the gate, but I flipped it face down. I wasn't ready for their voices, their excuses, or worse, their indifference. I stood, paced to the kitchen, and filled a glass with tap water. The faucet whined, the glass trembling in my hand. I set it down untouched, the surface rippling. In the dim light, my reflection in the window looked like a stranger. 37, eyes hollow, jaw clenched. I'd spent decades propping them up, working construction to cover their debts, missing sleep to wrangle their kids. And for what? To be erased in a single sentence, dismissed like a temp who'd overstayed his shift. I moved to the bedroom, yanked open a drawer, and pulled out a faded flannel. Folding it, I stopped, fingers tracing the worn fabric. It was mechanical, like muscle memory from years of cleaning up their messes. I dropped the shirt, kicked off my boots, and sat on the bed's edge. The mattress sagged, the bar's jukebox, thumping faintly below. My chest ached, not with tears but with a dull grinding pressure, like gears seizing up. I wanted to hate them, Harold's smug certainty, Marlene's betrayal, my siblings' silence, but the anger wouldn't come. Just a void swallowing everything. I grabbed my keys, tossed them back, thought about calling Evelyn, the only one who might care, but my thumb hovered over her name and froze. What could I say? That I was nothing to them, that I'd been a fool. The clock ticked past midnight, neon from the bar sign bleeding through the blinds. I lay back, staring at the ceiling's water stains, my pulse slowing but never settling. The pain was there, sharp and relentless, but I couldn't let it out. Not yet. Outside, a car horn blared and the world kept moving. I didn't. I just stayed there, breathing, waiting for something, anything to make sense. The family I'd bled for had cut me loose, and all I could do was sit in the wreckage, silent, trying to remember who I was without them. The ceiling. Stains blurred as my eyes drifted, the bar's muffled bass vibrating through the floor. Lying on my sagging mattress, I couldn't shake the hollow ache in my bones. My mind, unmoored, slipped into memories, snapshots of a time when family meant something more than a knife in the back. Those days felt like a half-remembered dream, glowing with a warmth that now burned. I was 10, maybe 11, racing my bike down our cul-de-sac, Harold trailing in his pickup, hollering, "Pedal harder, champ!" He'd park, crack open a root, beer and toss me one, the bottle sweating in the summer haze. We'd sit on the tailgate, him ruffling my hair, talking about fixing up an old Mustang someday. That version of Dad was a giant, flannel-clad, calloused hands, always ready with a laugh. But the Mustang never got built. By 16, I was the one under the hood, keeping his truck running while he leaned on me to step up. Marlene used to hum Patsy Cline in the kitchen, sliding me a plate of pancakes before school. She'd pin my Little League ribbons on the fridge, bragging to neighbors about my Tristan. But those mornings faded. By my 20s, she'd stopped cooking, her smiles reserved for Caleb's promotions or Nora's kids. I'd come home from double shifts, finding her tallying bills I'd end up paying. "Hey, you're the reliable one," she'd say, like it was a badge, not a chain. Caleb and I once built a treehouse, nailing boards until our hands blistered, sneaking comic books up there to read by flashlight. He'd grin, call me his wingman. But when he got married, I was the one hauling his furniture, watching his kids while he chased a corner office. Nora, too. She'd drag me to her high school talent shows, cheering when I clapped loudest. Yet years later, she'd hand me her toddlers without a thank you, like I was a live-in nanny, not her brother. Even Evelyn, my baby sister, wasn't spared. At 5, she'd cling to my leg, begging for piggyback rides. I'd hoist her up, spinning, until we collapsed in the grass, her giggles echoing. But now, at 17, she was caught in their orbit, texting me their demands. Her loyalty split. Those moments, root beers, pancakes, tree houses, piggybacks, were anchors I'd clung to, proof we were a unit. Now they felt like lies, each one twisting the blade deeper. I rolled onto my side, the bed springs creaking. The neon glow from the bar sign pulsed outside, casting shadows that danced like ghosts. I'd poured my life into them, every paycheck, every missed chance at something bigger, thinking it tied us together. But their dismissal, that casual cruelty at the anniversary, shattered the illusion. They'd taken my youth, my dreams, and left me with nothing but echoes of a family that never truly saw me. The ache spread, a slow poison. I wanted those days back, the ones where I wasn't just the fix-it guy. But wanting didn't change the truth. I'd been a means to an end, and they'd moved on without a glance. The bar's music faded, and I lay there, trapped in the wreckage of memories, knowing I had to find a way out. The ghosts of memory dissolved as dawn crept through the blinds, painting my room in grey streaks. I hadn't slept, my body heavy on the worn mattress, the bar's hum now a distant drone. The sting of my family's rejection lingered, but as I lay there, my mind snagged on moments I'd brushed off, fleeting signs that I'd never truly belonged. They were like cracks in a windshield, small at first, but spreading until the glass couldn't hold. Harold started locking his office door during Sunday football watch parties. He'd shuffle papers, muttering about personal business, his eyes darting if I lingered too long. Once I caught him slipping a checkbook into a drawer, his glare daring me to ask. I didn't. Marlene took to praising Caleb's new SUV, or Nora's remodeled kitchen at every holiday potluck, her voice sharp when I mentioned my overtime hours. "Work's not everything, Tristan," she'd snap like my hustle was a flaw. Her compliments for me stopped, replaced by sighs when I tracked mud through her spotless foyer. Caleb's texts grew sparse, only pinging when he needed something. Pick up his dry cleaning, cover his bar tab. Last 4th of July, he handed me his car keys to fetch his kids from camp, not even looking up from his beer pong game. "You got this, right?" he said, already turning away. Nora was worse. She'd schedule her date nights, then call me last minute to babysit. Her tone clipped over the phone. "You're not busy, are you?" she'd ask, assuming my life was an open slot for her convenience. I'd drive over, her porch light already off, her kids half asleep on the couch. Even Evelyn, my soft spot, started pulling away. She used to slip me handwritten notes, doodles of us fishing by the lake. But last summer at a family barbecue, she spent the day glued to her phone, relaying Mom's instructions. "Mom says don't forget the ice," she mumbled, barely meeting my eyes. Later, I overheard her on a call, laughing with a friend. "Tristan's always around like a handyman or something," she said, her words slicing deeper than she'd ever know. These weren't loud alarms, just whispers I ignored, chalking them up to stress or my own paranoia. I'd kept my head down, hauling their burdens, Harold's mortgage, Nora's kids, Caleb's debts, thinking loyalty would earn my place. But each slight, each assumption was a brick in the wall they'd built to keep me out. My stomach churned, the truth settling like ash. They'd never seen me as one of them, just a cog in their machine. I sat up, the room's chill biting my skin. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past, its headlights sweeping the walls. I wanted to rewind, confront those moments, demand answers, but I hadn't. I'd swallowed the unease, let it fester. Now their final dismissal at the anniversary had torn the veil, and these signs glared like neon in the dark. I was a fool, not for trusting, but for staying blind. The weight of it pressed harder, a silent scream trapped in my throat, urging me to move before the cracks consumed me whole. The dawn's grey light faded, leaving my room in shadows as the city stirred outside. The cracks of betrayal, those slights I'd ignored, had split wide open and I couldn't unsee them. Sitting on the bed's edge, my hands clenched, I made a choice. I was done being their mule. No arguments, no pleas. I'd vanish, build a life where I wasn't a footnote. My heart pounded, not with rage, but with a cold resolve, like a soldier mapping an escape before the enemy noticed. I stood, the floorboards creaking under my weight, and pulled a duffel bag from the closet. I stuffed it with essentials, jeans, a couple of tees, my steel-toe boots. Each item was a step away from them. I grabbed a dusty point-and-shoot camera, a whim from a garage sale years back, and tossed it in. It felt like a lifeline, something mine. At my desk, I opened my laptop, the screen's glow harsh. My savings account held enough for a few months. Cash from late-night shifts at the warehouse, untouched by their demands. I transferred it to a new account, one they'd never find. Next, I scoured my phone for a destination. A coastal town, 3 hours north, flashed in my mind. A place I'd driven through once, its docks alive with gulls and salt air. No one knew me there. I found a bus leaving at 5 a.m., booked a ticket online, and pocketed the confirmation. My fingers hovered over Evelyn's contact. She'd be crushed, but calling her risked wavering. I powered the phone off, the screen going black, severing their tether. I moved to the kitchenette, the linoleum cool under my socks. I packed a thermos of coffee and a protein bar, rations for the road. My lease was month to month. I'd email the landlord later, let him keep the deposit. Every move was deliberate, like laying out gear for a mission. I checked the bag again, zipping it shut, the sound sharp in the quiet. My eyes caught a photo taped to the fridge, me and Caleb at a county fair, arms slung around each other. I ripped it down, crumpled it, and let it fall. That life was over. The clock read 3 a.m. I slung the duffel over my shoulder, the weight grounding me. Locking the door, I stepped into the hallway, the stale air thick with cigarette smoke. Outside, the street was empty, a street lamp flickering. My breath clouded in the chill, but my mind was clear. Each step to the bus station, a nail in the coffin of my old self. The turmoil churned, grief for the family I'd lost, fear of the unknown, but I buried it. This wasn't about running. It was about reclaiming what they'd stolen. My right to exist. A neon diner sign buzzed as I passed, its light pooling on the pavement. I didn't look back at the apartment, at the life I'd let them define. The bus station loomed ahead, a grey hulk in the dark. I was ready to board, to leave their shadow behind, but the ache of their betrayal clung like damp rot, whispering I'd never be free. I squared my shoulders, jaw set, and kept walking. The bus station's fluorescent lights buzzed as I stepped off the pavement, my duffel biting into my shoulder. The coastal town's salt air hit me, sharp and raw, promising a new start. I'd left their world behind, my resolve a steel rod in my spine. A week later, holed up in a rented room above a fish market, I was scraping by, pouring coffee at a diner to cover the bills. The routine was brutal, 6 a.m. shifts, grease-stained aprons, but it was mine. I thought I'd cut them off clean, until a message shattered that illusion, exposing a betrayal uglier than I'd imagined. I was wiping down tables, the diner's jukebox crooning Merle Haggard, when my phone lit up. I'd kept it off for days, but curiosity won. It was Evelyn, her text a gut punch. "They're imploding without you," she wrote. "Check this." Attached was a screenshot from their family group chat, time-stamped the day I left. Marlene's message glared. "Tristan will crawl back. He always does. Let him sulk." Harold chimed in. "He's got no spine to stay gone." Caleb added a laughing emoji. Nora a shrug. They weren't just dismissing me. They were banking on my return like a dog slinking home after a scolding. My grip tightened on the rag, the counter's edge digging into my palm. I scrolled further. Evelyn had sent another image. A shared calendar invite for their Maldives trip with a note, "Tristan handles kids." They'd planned it all, my exclusion, my role as their unpaid lackey, before the anniversary bombshell. I wasn't just an outsider. I was a cog they'd machined into their lives, expected to grind on without complaint. The diner's clatter faded, my vision narrowing to the screen. My chest burned, not with shock, but with a frigid fury like ice cracking under pressure. I leaned against the wall, the fish market's briny stench seeping through the window. For years I'd hauled their weight, mortgages, errands, emergencies, thinking it proved my worth. But this chat, this cold calculation, showed they'd orchestrated my servitude, counting on my loyalty to keep me leashed. Evelyn's text ended. "I didn't know, Tris. I'm sorry." Her words stung, but they couldn't soften the truth. My family had built their world on my back, betting I'd never break free. I pocketed the phone, my jaw locked. The rage wasn't loud. It was a low, steady hum, like an engine ready to roar. I'd left to escape their shadow, but this was worse. They hadn't just discarded me. They'd engineered my erasure, assuming I'd play along. My hands shook as I refilled a customer's mug, coffee splashing. I wanted to smash something, to drive back and confront their smug faces. But that's what they expected. A reaction to reel me in. Outside, gulls screeched over the docks, waves pounding the pier. I stood frozen, the diner's heat stifling. This wasn't about me failing them. It was about them rigging the game. The turmoil churned, anger, betrayal, a flicker of self-doubt. But I crushed it. I'd already taken the first step out. Now I had to make sure they'd feel the void I left, not just assume I'd fill it again. The diner's heat clung to me as I shoved my phone into my pocket, Evelyn's screenshot searing my mind. Their group chat, Marlene's sneer, Harold's scorn, Caleb's smirk, proved I was just their errand boy, expected to snap back into place. But I wasn't their puppet anymore. Standing by the counter, the ocean's roar faint through the open door, I decided to flip the script. I'd make them face the hole I'd leave behind, not just assume I'd fill it. My blood simmered, but my head was clear, like a hunter setting a snare in the dark. After my shift, I ducked into the diner's back room. the air thick with fryer grease. I pulled up my email on a borrowed laptop, the keys sticky under my fingers. I drafted a message to the whole family, each word a razor. "I'm gone for good," I typed. "Plan your Maldives trip without me. I'm not your babysitter." I BCC'd Evelyn, sparing her the blast. The cursor blinked, my pulse steady. This wasn't a tantrum, it was a grenade lobbed to shatter their complacency. I hit send, the laptop's fan whirring, and felt a grim satisfaction like locking a gate they'd never pry open. I didn't stop there. I knew they'd call, beg, or guilt me, so I blocked their numbers. Harold, Marlene, Caleb, Nora, one by one, my thumb deliberate on the screen. Evelyn stayed, a thin thread I couldn't yet cut. I cleared my voicemail, expecting their whining to flood in. My trap was simple. Let them stew in their own chaos, forced to handle the kids, the logistics, the life I'd propped up. They'd assumed I'd cave, but silence was my weapon, and I'd wield it like a blade. Back in my room, the fish market's clamor below, I sat on a rickety chair and mapped my next steps. I'd keep working, stay low, let their world unravel without me. The camera from my bag caught my eye, its lens glinting under the bare bulb. I'd start shooting the docks, the waves, something to anchor me here, away from their grasp. My plan was airtight, each move a brick in a wall they couldn't climb. The turmoil gnawed, guilt for Evelyn, dread of their backlash. But I shoved it down, my focus a laser. I stepped onto the fire escape, the town's lights sprawling toward the horizon. A trawler's horn blared, cutting the night. I imagined their group chat exploding. Marlene's panic, Harold's curses, Caleb's whining. They'd realized too late I wasn't bluffing. My chest tightened, not with regret, but with the weight of severing a life I'd let define me. I'd been their scaffold, and now I'd yanked it away, leaving them to scramble. The sea breeze stung my face, carrying the tang of kelp. I gripped the railing, my knuckles pale. This trap wasn't just for them. It was for me, to prove I could stand without their chains. The pain of their betrayal pulsed, a raw wound, but I embraced it. I'd make them see what they'd lost, not by shouting, but by disappearing into a life they couldn't touch. The town hummed below, and I turned back inside, ready for their collapse. The fire escape's iron chill lingered on my palms as I stepped back into my room, the coastal town's pulse thrumming below. My email, the trap I'd set, had launched, and I braced for the fallout. 2 weeks later, the diner's morning rush slowed, and I was scrubbing mugs when my phone vibrated. Evelyn's name flashed, her message a flare in the dark. My trap had worked. Their Maldives dream had imploded, and the family I'd carried was crumbling under its own weight. I wiped my hands, heart thudding like a war drum, and read. They cancelled the trip, Evelyn wrote. No one would pay. For sitters. Her words painted a scene. Harold slamming doors, his voice a gravelly roar. Marlene clutching her purse, eyes darting. Caleb and Nora bickering over who'd foot the bill. She attached a photo, suitcases piled in their living room, untouched, a kid's toy truck abandoned nearby. Their group chat, she said, was a war zone. Accusations. Flying, each blaming the other for the mess. They'd banked on me swooping in, their eternal safety net, but I'd ripped that away, leaving them to face the void. I leaned against the diner's counter, the scent of burnt toast sharp. Outside, fishing boats bobbed under a slate-grey sky, their masts swaying. The image of their chaos should have sparked joy, but instead, a cold justice settled in my chest, like a judge's gavel falling. For years, I'd been their fixer, patching. Leaks, minding kids, swallowing their disregard, while they planned my servitude. Now their house of cards had folded, each member exposed as helpless without my labor. My fingers tightened around the phone. The screen's glow harsh in the dim light. Evelyn's next text hit harder. Mum's crying. Dad won't talk. They didn't think you'd stay gone. I pictured Marlene's mascara-streaked face, Harold's jaw locked, their pride shattered. The turmoil churned, satisfaction laced with a pang for Evelyn, caught in their storm. I'd wanted them to feel my absence, but seeing it laid bare, like a wreck on the highway, stirred a hollow ache. I'd been their foundation, and without me, their plans, their unity, had buckled like a cheap trailer in a gale. I slipped the phone into my jeans, the diner's bustle, a distant hum. A customer's laugh grated, but I kept my face blank, rinsing a mug under scalding water. This wasn't victory, it was clarity. They'd built their lives on my sacrifice, assuming I'd never walk. Now, their unraveling was proof. I'd been more than they deserved. The pain of their betrayal throbbed, a bruise I'd carry, but it fueled me. I'd forced their hand, made them choke on their own arrogance. The diner's neon sign flickered, casting jagged shadows. I dried my hands, the towel rough against my skin. Their collapse wasn't my burden anymore. I'd watch from afar, let them stew in the rubble of their choices. The ocean's distant crash called, a reminder of the life I was carving. My resolve, hardened, a flint sparking in the dark. They'd underestimated me, but I'd make sure they'd never forget the cost of my absence. The diner's neon glow dimmed as I stepped into the salty dusk, the town's heartbeat steady beyond the pier. Their collapse, suitcases abandoned, accusations hurled, had confirmed my worth, but I wasn't done. 3 months into my new life, I was grinding through shifts, my hands steady on the espresso machine, when the door chimed. Harold stood. There, his frame stooped, eyes sunken like a man who'd lost a bet. My pulse spiked, a raw jolt, but I kept my face stone, wiping the counter as he shuffled toward me. Their world had fractured without me, and now he'd come to drag me back. I nodded to the corner booth, away from the lunch crowd's chatter. He sat, his flannel rumpled, fingers drumming the tabletop. I stayed standing, arms crossed, the hum of the soda fountain a low pulse. He cleared his throat, voice rough as gravel. "Tristan, we're drowning," he said. "The trip's dead, the family's a mess. Come home, we need you." His plea was desperate, but it reeked of the same old script, me as their crutch, never their equal. I stared into his weathered face, seeing years of my labor propping up his pride. The turmoil surged, anger at his gall, grief for the father I'd once idolized, but I let it settle, a storm passing. I leaned in, voice low, each word a hammer strike. "I'm done, Harold," I said. "Don't call, I've built something without you." His eyes widened, lips parting, but I turned, grabbed a fresh pot of coffee and poured him a cup. "Drink and go," I added, sliding it across the table. He froze, the mug steaming between us. I walked back to the counter, the linoleum slick, under my sneakers, and resumed polishing the chrome. Harold sat silent, the weight of my words sinking in. The diner's clatter, forks on plates, a radio's faint country twang, filled the void. He sipped once, stood and trudged out, his boots scuffing the floor. The bell jingled and he was gone, a shadow swallowed by the harbor's haze. My chest tightened, not with regret, but with the final snap of a chain I'd worn too long. I exhaled, the air sharp with roasted beans. Outside, the pier's lights flickered, casting golden streaks on the water. I'd severed the tie, not with screams, but with a quiet blade, carving out my dignity. The pain of their betrayal lingered, a scar I'd bear, but it no longer ruled me. I'd been their anchor, their mule, and they'd gambled I'd never leave. Now they'd lost, and I stood taller, free of their yoke. A co-worker's laugh broke my thoughts, the diner alive with early evening bustle. I tucked a rag into my belt, my hands steady. The ocean's rhythm called, promising a future I'd shape. Evelyn might hurt, but she'd understand someday. I glanced at the camera bag by the register, my new lens waiting for dawn's light. Their absence was my gain, a life unbound, mine to define. I squared my shoulders, ready for the shifts. End the harbor's glow, a beacon of what I'd claimed by walking away. Harold's shadow vanished into the harbor's mist, and I stood behind the counter, the diner's hum a steady pulse. 6 months later, I'd carved a new existence in this coastal town. Each day a brick laid in a foundation they couldn't touch. The betrayal's scar throbbed, but I'd turned it into fuel, building a life that answered to no one. Dawn found me on the waterfront, my boots crunching sand, camera slung over my shoulder, capturing the sea's raw churn. A mirror of the storm I'd weathered. I'd leased a one-room studio above a bait shop, its walls bare but for my prints, waves crashing. Gulls mid-flight. The space was tight, the radiator rattling, but it was mine. I worked mornings at the diner, slinging hash browns, trading jabs with Jade, a sharp-tongued waitress who'd become my first ally. She'd dragged me to a photography workshop led by Miles, a grizzled vet with a knack for seeing stories in shadows. My shots, gritty slices of dock life, earned a nod at a local gallery show. I sold one, a black and white of a trawler cutting fog, for $40. That cash felt heavier than any paycheck I'd earned for them. Nights I'd wander the boardwalk, the carnival lights spinning, kids shrieking on the Ferris wheel. I'd sit on a bench, the briny breeze cooling my skin, and feel the weight lift. The turmoil lingered, guilt for leaving Evelyn, echoes of their dismissal, but it no longer owned me. I'd traded their chaos for this, calloused hands, a lens, a purpose. Evelyn texted once, saying they'd rescheduled their trip, managing without me. "Miss you," she added. I didn't reply. Silence was my shield, letting me heal without their pull. My life wasn't grand, no picket fence, no fat bank account, but it was real. I'd hiked the cliffs at sunrise, the trail muddy, my breath fogging, snapping shots of the horizon's first glow. Miles said I had grit, urged me to keep shooting. Jade would rib me, saying I'd be famous before she'd admit liking my work. Their words, small as they were, stitched me back together. I wasn't whole, but I was enough, standing on my own in a town that didn't know my past. The betrayal had been a blade, cutting deep, but it freed me to forge this path. I'd shed their expectations, their chains, and found a rhythm in the tides, the shutters click. The pain was there, a low hum, but it drove me forward, not back. I kept a print by my bed, a lone buoy bobbing in a storm, reminding me I could weather anything. They'd never see this, Tristan, and I didn't need them to. I was rebuilding, not for applause, but for the man I'd forgotten I could be. What about you? Have you ever had to walk away from someone who took you for granted, building something new from the ashes? Share your story. When did you choose yourself over a toxic tie? Your moment might spark someone else's courage. The boardwalk seemed pinched. Lights dimmed as I stood, the sea's whisper calling me back. I adjusted my camera strap, the weight familiar, and headed toward the cliffs. Tomorrow's dawn waited, and I'd be there, lens ready, chasing a light that was finally mine.